I've seen people say that comic creators want to have an adversarial relationship with fans, that they enjoy that conflict, that they don't try and quote unquote behave themselves because they enjoy that turmoil. Now, I don't think this is true at all, but I like to look at these assumptions, these statements, and try and get to where they're coming from. Not just, hey, it's some crazy person saying crazy things. There's usually some sliver, some origin to this story. So let's look into it. Hey, everybody, this is Perch. I'm taking a longer view on this than, say, the last 5 years or so. A lot of people look at comics through a lens of the last 5 years. I saw somebody recently say that Comicsgate's been going on for decades. It is not. Twitter hasn't been going on for decades. None of this stuff has been going on for decades, and not like this. But I think if you take the longer term view, I think it helps inform a little bit about where things are really at, why they got the way they got, and what we can do about them. Because if you're always looking at something in the very short term, in the right now, you tend to it tends to feel more hopeless. Whereas if you have history to look back on, then you have some signs of how to get out of situations. So the comment that is on my mind right now is this idea that comic creators like having an adversarial relationship with fans. Now, the near term origin, the reason why this is coming up again, is that people are trying to reconcile in their minds why some creators and some fans, or why some creators go on social media and they say things that seem intended to provoke a reaction. Now, make no mistake about it, there definitely are creators who do that. Sometimes they do it for attention. Sometimes they do it because it's kind of a screaming out, "Look at me, look at me." Other times, it's kind of a general lack of knowing how to engage with the world. I think that what's interesting is there's comic creators who live in the middle of the wilderness, like in the middle of Colorado or Texas or North Carolina, and they live very very isolated, and they tend to be pretty good buttoned up people. They have this good manner with fans. They tend to be pretty relaxed. The people who seem to be a bit more awkward with fans are the ones who live in the cities, which I always find weird because you're surrounded by people, so it should be easier to relate to others. But some of those people are some of the most awkward at cons. If you do signings and things, they're not. They seem really like there's the very delicate's the wrong word, but just that there's a lot going on there somewhere. And this is not a blanket statement. Nothing is true. There's other people. I mean, Brian Edward Hill lives in LA, and I mean, there's the most kind of down to earth, reasonable guy you could ever meet. So this isn't a one size fits all story by any stretch of imagination. It's just there is sometimes some awkwardness, and sometimes that awkwardness translates to weird interactions. Now I'm talking in the cons. I'm not talking social media. Social media, as a general term, makes everyone worse. You're not a creator, not a fan. It has a way of amplifying kind of grievances or irritations that people have with each other. It's just the nature of the platform. It tends to do that. And this is not a new story either. It's been going on since the Usenet, since people had AOL discs that they would, give them 20 free hours. I mean, this is not new. But it is with comics. I mean, I think you also have the creator kind of vibe. So you have a bunch of elements going on. I've mentioned this before, where fame and popularity seems to go to comic creators' heads in some cases worse or quicker than other fields. And I think it makes sense why. I completely understand why. It's if you're used to working in isolation, and if you're writing or you're drawing, you are in isolation. You're not working in an office. It's not like the comic creators all get in a car and go to the comic creating building. And there's big tables out there, and they chat by the water cooler, and they talk about Game of Thrones, and they go back and they draw for a little while. That's not how comics are made. Comics are generally made in isolation. Something that I think right now all of us probably can relate to a little bit with the lockdowns and the stay-at-home orders. Imagine if this was your only life. In some cases, some of you might love it. In other cases, you might crawl up the wall, lose your mind. Even creators who are in theory very very successful are struggling with some of this lockdown area, and they should be used to it. By all accounts, Neil Gaiman's having a lot of troubles with the lockdown, and here's a guy who's got a long career writing in isolation. But anyway, if you have that kind of daily life going on, and then suddenly your real big interactions with people are either going to a comic store where you're treated like a celebrity, or going to a convention where you're treated like a super celebrity. I mean, think about it. Right now, even if you are, working in pharmaceutical, making 180, 200,000 a year, you are making more than most artists, most writers in comics. Right there, you are. But when was the last time you went to a convention and you got to go up on stage and 1,000 people are clapping and cheering for you and everybody wants your autograph? Right? That doesn't happen. So if you are used to being somewhat isolated and then your only real public interactions are in this kind of celebrity way, it's going to go to your head, or maybe going to your head is too aggressive. It's going to just change the way you engage and perceive. It's going to make it not a normal situation because you're not living a normal situation. You're not living the lifestyle that 99% of the people out with jobs doing work live. And if that's the case, then it's going to make these interactions stranger. I want to reject, and that's why I think some fans think, okay, well, these creators are deliberately wanting to create this adversarial relationship with fans. I think they're looking at it through a lens of kind of awkward social behavior or awkward meetings. They're looking at it through social media where everything's amplified. And there is a handful of creators, I don't know, a quarter, a third, all, I mean, not all, but there's some who need attention. And if they're not getting it, they will create attention. There's how many times have you seen the writer or the artist go on social media and just start taking shots at some other creator? I mean, and it doesn't really matter how, where you are in your career. You could be of limited popularity or mega popularity. I will say, just, blunt out, I think Rob Liefeld enjoys going on social media and posting kind of poking things at Marvel or DC or another creator, whatever he happens to be. I mean, there was this whole dust up, I don't know if any of you remember, like 4 or 5 years ago, I think now, between Rob Liefeld and Scott Snyder, where it felt like Liefeld was just poking at him to get a reaction. And it came out of nowhere. Like there's no background history. And I think that's why, by the way, when I've done these feud videos, every now and then some creators will reach out and say, well, you don't really have it right. You should avoid those feud videos. Part of the reason why they're saying that and thinking that is because these feuds come out of left field in a lot of cases. I know many creators who complained and mentioned that they'll be just, they'll be alerted to some drama by a friend, like, hey, did you realize that, person X over here just started crapping on you in public? And there's no lead up. There's no history. There's no inciting event. It's like somebody got bored one day and's like, hey, let's create a mess. And I think there are some creators who are like that. And I think it's I could be a therapist here and try and analyze why that happens, but it happens. But I think the overall premise, I think the blanket statement, and this is where I hate blanket statements, which is kind of a blanket statement in itself. But I hate these statements like all creators, or creators like to antagonize fans, like to have an angry relationship with fans. I don't like those comments because I think you lose any of the nuance, you lose any of the why in that situation, and I think that doesn't do anyone any good. It is, I will say, hands down, and I've said this from talking to hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the comic industry, creators of all types, at cons, in person, through email, over the phone. I think that the vast majority of them want to have a positive relationship with fans. They do not want to have an angry adversarial relationship. They are not setting out to like, hey, let's go screw with each other. They are not doing that. They want to, maybe for selfish reasons, they want to have a positive relationship with fans because they love that superstar treatment when they go to cons. That's one reason. Or maybe they're just decent people. I think many are decent people. They just want to kind of live their life and do what they do. These are all things that happen in comics. And I think that people are too quick to create an us versus them mentality of, well, I'm having a fight with this creator, so therefore, they're all against me. I think the other thing is that people tend to put on blinders for the creators they like, that the ones they like can do no wrong. I think I love Art Adams, but he's done some. And I don't want to say dodgy. That sounds too mysterious. But he's no showed at times. He's done things they're aggravating to me. But I still love his artwork, and I think he's good. And I can say, if I'm a comic publisher, I'm looking for him. I'm going to give him money because he'll sell books. I think online, you look at. I'll just say it this way, and this is the stuff that always creates the downvotes. I think that there's a lot of people who signed up and kind of follow and appreciate Ethan Van Sciver and some of the things he says online. I think that they like kind of having that insight into the comic industry, like being able to kind of talk and interact with a comic creator. And I think they have been, rightfully so, outraged at things that Van Sciver's been outraged on, like when the guy sent the picture of his butt. I think that a lot of fans were, rightly so, felt like that was a crappy thing to do, that was a lousy, unprofessional thing to do. But at the same time, these same fans, the people who agree that was a lousy thing to do, will kind of turn a blind eye to what some of the things that Ethan gets up to, which at times are their own level of kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, trolling or whatever, anything. So I think and I think that that's true for everyone. There are fans of Gail Simone. There are fans of John Byrne. There are fans of Matt Rosenberg. There's fans of Donnie Cates. There's all you can list any creator, and you can have fans of those people that tend to cut them more slack than they do for other creators or other people. It's one of those, it's why I did a video a while back, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I tend to operate on I hope that people will hold me to the same standard that they're holding other people to. I don't want breaks. I don't want people to look the other way because they happen to like something I did. I want to be held to the same standard as everyone. I think that's fair is fair. And I think that's a little bit of this. Do the creators hate fans? I think that sometimes people get into that because a certain creator they don't like kind of gets on their bad end and rubs them the wrong way, and in many cases got there on purpose. I mean, look, I know there's a lot of listeners right now to this video probably listening in who like Al Ewing. Because when I do videos on Al Ewing about something I don't like, I get a bunch of people who get very upset. But Al Ewing, who goes on and brags about blocking people, about I am, Bloctavius, I don't know, the whatever. And Dan Slott has done the same thing. He's bragged about people who block. I think that's a lame thing to do. Because it feels like unnecessarily antagonistic. Regardless, maybe you're blocking all the right people. Maybe all the people that you're blocking are creeps and weirdos and causing trouble. It's certainly possible. Okay, you've got a perfect track record of just blocking the baddies. Even if that's true, I don't think you should go out and brag about it. It sounds like a lame thing to brag about. It first of all, it sounds arrogant, and second, it's accentuating a negative. So I don't think it's a positive. That's just me. Now I say that, and like I said, there's fans of Al Ewing who get very upset when I say that. But I think it's a fair comment. Whether you like him, you hate him. I think that whether it was, again, I can go through all the names: Scott Snyder, Gail Simone, Tom King, Ethan Van Sciver, Richard Meyer, whoever you like. If the person you like suddenly started going out and bragging about blocking people, then I think that's a douchey thing to do. That's just me. Whoever the person might be, I think that's not a helpful thing to anyone. And I think but these things happen, and I think the fans magnify it at times, and I think that's part of what leads to this belief that there's this creators versus fans mentality. If it hasn't been clear yet, I'm about to wrap this video up. Part of why I do these topics, because people ask me, why are you getting into that? We like the Avengers reviews. We like the history lessons. We like those various kind of pieces. Why do you get into the social stuff? Wes from Thinking Critical will sometimes, like you get into the social stuff. And part of why is I'm trying to get to understanding. I'm trying to get to some reasoning behind all this. I don't think it's healthy that fans and creators have an adversarial relationship. Now, I can't wave a magic wand and heal the world or anywhere close to it. But I think if we talk through these things, then I think it starts to put some context, some reasoning behind them, and we start to have a better relationship overall, all of us. I think that it slowly gets us to a place where, maybe these things aren't so bad, aren't as bad as they seem. And the fact that we've been kind of obsessing over them or worrying about them or giving them more weight in our minds, we don't need to. We can let some of that go. That's part of what I think talking through things does for you. So that's why I do it. Is it a good idea? I don't know, but that's what I'm doing. So that's there you go. That's my approach. Best I can do. Anyway, what do you think? This whole fans versus creators thing. Do you have a good argument? I'd love to hear it. Do you have a counter argument of like, no, there actually is something to this of creators who hate fans and it's part of the nature. Is that do you believe that? And if so, why? Leave me a comment below. Let me know. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. I am on Twitter and Facebook at Comic Perch. But most importantly, thank you for listening.